Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Now as of recording this, it is Christmas Eve, and thanks to the fact that I'll be going on a pretty long vacation over the next week, that might explain why this episode is out a lot earlier than people would expect, and thank God that the week decided to provide me with a really short list of debuts, which thankfully means that this is going to be a lot easier to manage. Kind of wish that the songs that were actually debuting were better, and even if there was a minor USB album bomb for Fred again on Hot Dance, it unfortunately was not really enough to make up for a lot of mediocrity that's charting this week. It was a bit disappointing in some regards too, especially with how quiet it was, but still, the quality is certainly in some spots here. I'm at least not going to complain, and I don't really see a lot of this lasting once the new year rolls around. It could be interesting there, and that starts with Dracula by Tame Impala, currently holding number 1, and surprisingly it didn't, although with that in mind it had a ton of competition this week, as the gap between it and our number 3 was only 4 spots on the Hot 100, and with it losing on streaming and also not really getting enough on radio to match up to it, it was unfortunately, it's unfortunately looking like it might fall off number 1 soon, although with what's coming up, I'm not exactly that upset about it either. I'm surprised it lasted this long. Now this would be where I thought that No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe would fall past number 2, but it looks like the streaming is actually stabilizing for this one, even as radio could not give two shits about this song at this point. And honestly, while I don't expect it will last at this spot next week, considering what's coming up beneath it, it is holding remarkably steady at this point. Not exactly all that upset about that either. But onto the song that I thought would actually take number 1 this week and was so goddamn close against all odds, that Turn the Lights Off by Katso featuring John at number 3. Now importantly, this is still topping the sales charts overall, not just dance sales again, and against all odds, he actually managed to hit the Hot 100, becoming the first new Danish act to chart since Lucas Graham back in 2016. And quite frankly, with the song being this great and being attached to a really funny meme that I'm glad is getting a lot of notoriety, this could very well go up and hit number 1 as early as next week. That would be awesome and really revealing of just how strong the Hot Dance charts are at the moment. I did not expect this at all. Case in points, Let the World Burn by Chris Gray, Rebel and Cry being knocked down to number 4, and this one only really collapsed on streaming because it was up against the 21 Savage album bomb on the Bubbling Under charts, but it's still holding remarkably steady. I can easily see this sticking around and potentially hitting the Hot 100 once Christmas music dies off, and while I don't like it, again, I do understand the appeal of it, especially in this current climate. Then there's I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Aragon down to number 5, and this one's interesting because while it lost streaming, it's still bulleting on the main chart, which to me indicates that either sales or radio are actually on board with this. Would be interesting to see how much they would embrace it in the latter category, considering the, let's just say, interesting run that it's had over the last couple of weeks. Hell, it's also worth considering the gap between it and Victory Lap by Fred Against Skepta and Park Boy Max at number 6, which, yes, obviously got a streaming boost thanks to USB's re-release, and I'm not about to complain about this song sticking around past 26 weeks against all odds. But again, there's such a noticeable gap here where I Run was on the Bubbling Under and this has gotten nowhere near there. Look, I would like to see more of these songs get there, but the fact that we got 5 in that range is incredible, and it's absolutely welcome because it beats out No Batty Dow by Sakai and Slaughter at number 7. Unfortunately, this doesn't look like it's stalling out as much as I would have hoped. It's still got momentum. Why? And on that note, we have a song that's riding fantastic sales and some decent streaming thanks to its use in the TV show, just like with Turn the Lights Off, although unfortunately it's All the Things She Said by Harrison debuting at number 8. Now look, it's another case of a song that's from years ago actually getting a charting run thanks to virality, and thankfully, unlike Turn the Lights Off, this doesn't really have the streaming to back it up. I don't expect this will last that high, and quite frankly, I'm at a point now where I wish that this sort of song would just not chart anymore. It's getting really exhausting and repetitive, and yeah, yeah, the song's not good as you'd expect. I mean, at the very least, it denied Blackout Day Stay Away by Ian Asher and Fantagram from really jumping past number 9, because for some ungodly reason, streaming is still behind this, and man, it's just nice that it underperformed on Dance Airplay. We really did not need this sticking around, especially when you have the alternative, which made a big jump into the top 10 as I predicted, and I am absolutely thrilled it's here. I think I'm Addicted by Oscar Medkay and Haley Joel at number 10. This has massive stream behind it, and while radio is not on board with this yet, I expect it will gain a big run there once Make Me Feel properly goes recurrent, and quite frankly, it's an absolutely excellent song and one of my favorite charting songs in recent memory, so seeing it become such a big hit and give Oscar Medkay 3 potential top 100 year-end spots this year already, that is excellent, and yeah, I really hope it continues to go up. It is fantastic. And on that positive note, our fall-offs, unfortunately a few were debuts last week, although it also took out the added extra casualty of Bad Happening Funk by those 4 funk artists that I can't remotely distinguish apart and don't want to give any further recognition to. Geez, this is what happens when you mislead your audience into thinking that this is a Five Nights at Freddy's theme song, when in reality it's a funk remix of Dark Red by Steve Lacy. That's what you get, you fucking hacks. Hell, I think it's also telling that Confess Your Love Funk by Prey, Zed Major, Zinc and Emerald fell hard to 20, as while it has gone through a decently better run than Bad Happening Funk, it's also had its name changed, and quite frankly the novelty was going to die off in record time when you steal and blatantly ruin the great songs of actual talented artists, especially in this case where it's Leve, and quite frankly she has more talent than the majority of funk artists that exist nowadays, if not all of them. That's what you get, you fucking hacks. But sadly, alongside that, we saw the expected collapse of Mild Ways by Tame Impala down hard to number 12, as it looks like it's collapsing on streaming, even if notably it's actually number 50 on Hot Rock and Alternative, which further implies that there are 11 songs at least within Hot Rock / Alternative range right now, which for Hot Dance being nearly half of the charts, that is incredible. I am really happy to see that. It's really welcome as well. Oh, and also Crystallized by John Summer featuring Inez fell to 15. Quite frankly, it was a return back to earth, and I'm amazed that this song actually managed to stick this high to begin with. Even with all the divisive reception, it seems like people are on board with it. Telling. But of course, what caused a lot more interesting movements than you would have expected came in the mini USB album release, where alongside some songs from the album actually sticking around relatively well, against all odds he actually managed to see 2 comebacks this week, both being the Sammy Virgie collabs, with Talk of the Town with Reggie at 24 and Winnie with Winnie at 25. Quite frankly, the latter one is actually really close to actually making the top 100 of the year-end list, and with Fred again potentially having 5 year-end list spots for 2026 already, that is incredible, and quite frankly, it might even include some of his future releases. We'll have to see how those do. And the discussion of Fred again doesn't end there, because now debuts, well, number 18, I Love You by Fred Again and Wallfacer. So here we are, folks, the final release of the USB002 era, and quite frankly I think that this whole release strategy was a genuine success for Fred again. I mean, having over half of the releases actually chart pretty considerably on Hot Dance nowadays is absolutely incredible, especially considering the sound of these are not exactly mainstream friendly, and when Fred again's actually used his platform to elevate his peers and give them some genuine success, which in this case with the guest artist Wallfacer is a name that I'm not remotely familiar with, but I might be interested in checking out. Fred again has a good taste for people that he works with, and of course, because it's Fred again, naturally the last single that gets released is probably the single most inaccessible and intense song that is released in recent memory, and quite frankly I'm amazed that this is actually charting this high at all. Filled with this booming techno beat with barely any melodies and some dark unnerving synths and bass that just floats in and out, with a sort of dark and intense atmosphere that is genuinely menacing. I am really surprised that a song like this actually goes there, and I'm happy it does. The atmosphere is so dark, brooding, and easily replicates what made Burial so special back in the late 2000s. And while it's not the most interesting of the singles from this rollout, and again, a little bit of melody could have helped make this even better, as it was, it really nails that dark, brooding atmosphere. And quite frankly, if this is the note that this rollout's going to end off, yeah, it ended off on a banger. This is a really damn good song. Number 8, All the Things She Said by Harrison. Okay, seriously, what the fuck are we even doing here? Do we need to go back to Deep House covers from 2022, let alone by the guy who sung On Sally by Hardwell, which is one of the worst mainstream EDM songs of the 2010s for its sexist lyrics and awful production? And quite frankly, Harrison's catalog since then has been shockingly bad, even despite him appearing on a decent Night Party song from long after people cared about that alias. Everything else has been disposable junk or really bad covers. And in this case, yeah, this isn't changing my mind. This blows. The darker slap house adjacent production has aged really badly, even despite a halfway decent bass line in there. Although I wasn't really huge on the fact that it completely dominates the mix and still feels surprisingly weak, all things considered. If it didn't have a decent melody behind it from the original track, I would not be as forgiving there. And to top it all off, the slower tempo for the vocals is just completely pointless. The original song had a manic and intense energy that really matched the sort of vocal delivery that both singers of Tattoo nailed, but of course here he has to slow it down to match this house groove, and quite frankly it proves why Harrison is one of the least charismatic and least welcome names to get a revival on this chart this year. I mean, seriously, there's no reason that we should be giving something like this virality outside of a cheap bit of controversy and the fact that it was used in a very vapid TV show that I have zero interest in getting into. And when Harrison sounds like he doesn't give two shits ruining a rock classic like this and making it into disposable junk, yeah, this really sucks. Skip this, and I really hope that the virality dies off fast. And on the topic of miserable notes, yeah, at this point dance pop is going to get skipped from coverage from me, because quite frankly at this point it's ridiculous of the fact that we've not had several debuts in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and if Billboard doesn't want to give a shit about actually classifying their songs properly, I'm gonna give this chart about as much attention as it deserves. So yeah, let's move on and forget about this. I mean, at least dance streaming actually had a, say, debut here, even if it's not a unique one, and quite frankly, it being a smaller metric charts, there's been a lot more interesting stuff happening here than I think anyone expected. Yes, How It's Done by Huntrix held #1 as expected, but the big story is Turn the Lights Off by Katso featuring John debuting really high at #5, which again is revealing that this has more than just ridiculous sales. I can see this having a ton of momentum, and that's really good. And hell, if you also want a sign of how strong that song is overall, again, it's #1 on dance sales too, and #1 on sales overall in the entire country regardless of genre, which is absolutely insane to me. And it's really telling just how strong this top 2 in general is, because outside of Caramel by Mesto falling hard to 14 as expected, the other story is the debut of All the Things She Said by Harrison at #2, and this one also debuted in the top 20 of sales overall in the United States, which, look, I don't expect it will have the same level of staying power that Turn the Lights Off has, and quite frankly, with it being attached to something this garbage, I'm not exactly going to complain about it losing momentum either. But geez, that's a really strong top 2 and proof that dance music's actually thriving in 2026. We could be onto something here. This is looking really good. Certainly more interesting than a lot of our actual other unique debuts here, with the first unfortunately being number 13, Take Your Places by SIDEPIECE and Westend.
All my ladies, take your places.
Another week, another tech house filler track on dance sales that has just got nothing interesting to note, and in this case it's particularly egregious because just like Cry For You 2025, it proves that SIDEPIECE have lost all their spark over the years, because yeah, this really sucks as well. The acidic touches may be decent next to the pretty generic tech house beats, with some female vocal samples that try to set out a trashy girl vibe as they go out to the club, all against some bizarrely produced hi-hats that are really noticeable noticeable on the drops, and no melody to speak of. So in other words, this is really thrown together and really lazy tech house from a duo that I expect many better things from than this. So yeah, not good. Skip it. Number 10, Need You by Brian Zeno.
Every moment I need you. Every second and every breath I breathe, I knew. When I close my eyes to go to sleep, I knew. In the morning, in the evening, I need.
Jeez, isn't this ironic considering the other artist with a very similar name who more people actually know has got a charity single for the Palestinian cause, and it's happening to chart on the overall sales chart as we speak. Yeah, this looks a little bit desperate, doesn't it? Now, in this case, it's at least a new song from a guy who has a pretty decent following, all things considered. I didn't expect him to have the level of momentum that he actually does. Leaning closer to deep house with some lyrics that have an underlying Christian tone to them that's been surprisingly very prevalent throughout the main charts in 2025, and it's one that I have mixed thoughts on, to say the least. I mean, I'm getting pretty tired of the whole Christian ideology beliefs that are throwing their way into stuff where they don't really belong, which is really revealing because, honestly, I actually found this pretty decent. Yes, it's not exactly all that memorable outside the repeated titular line, and the atmosphere on the verses does feel a bit weak in conveying that vibe, but at least give Brian Zeno credit. His vocals here are pretty solid. I can at least absolutely get why people would be on board with this, and even despite my worrying thoughts about his catalog considering the amount of covers that are there, off of this alone, he's at least got some potential when creating original music, especially when the atmosphere on the drops is pretty decent. It actually really worked for me. Again, not very memorable, and I don't see this lasting much at all, but yeah, it's not really all that bad. It's fine. I'll take it. Number 9, Give Me Something Arknight's Enfield by OneRepublic.
I'm chasing the glow. Give me something. Someone to love, someone to count, please. Stars above, give me something.
I mean, it was only going to be a matter of time before something like this would happen. Between the fact that Ryan Tedder has some surprisingly credible taste in dance collaborations over the years, and the fact that OneRepublic has been getting a lot less rock infused since they've been going on, with a lot of music made for media that honestly has been extremely hit or miss for me, it would only be a matter of time before they would chart something here on their own, with this being associated with a fucking phone game. This is the sort of thing that gets confined to dance sales and nowhere else. Jesus Christ. And really, I had no idea what to expect going into this, considering that while I like this band's big hits, and especially from the native era, a lot of them have held up really well. And that's also with the acknowledgement that their material around Rescue Me and onwards has been really inconsistent at best and kind of mediocre at worst. So going into this being a lot more closer to a synthwave and funk song, I at least had some interest in where this would go, and honestly, I'm shocked by this. This is great. Part of this is the fact that that production with the synthwave touches and the disco groove honestly works really well for me, where they go full on into the cheesiness that makes that scene so appealing even nowadays, with some really pretty sounding synths that play off the percussion, guitar, and that really fat bass line. It gives me a lot of Justice vibes, and that is a huge win for these guys. But I gotta give credit as well to Ryan Tedder going off in the vocals here, where he goes for a much more lower vocal range that really transitions into the falsetto quite nicely. Kind of reminds me of when Justin Timberlake was actually good, and he has the charisma to actually sell this too, which is insane for me. It sounds like he's putting way more effort into this than he really should, especially for a fucking phone game. And when the lyrics discuss the seeking of a new world and new connections, it's proof that these guys are actually really paying attention to how their production matches their content. And honestly, with the sound of this being a lot more futuristic, it really comes together really well. Again, it makes no sense why they're trying this hard for a fucking phone game adjacent song, but for me, this might be one of their best songs in recent memory. And yeah, I'm shocked to be saying that. This is great. Worth hearing. Number 8, Satisfaction Skank by Fatboy Slim and the Rolling Stones.
Well, check it out now. Right about now.
Yes, this is actually a thing that's charting. Although, when you hear both of these songs back to back, it doesn't really surprise me that Fatboy Slim, of all names, would actually go for something this outrageous. I mean, the original Rockefeller Skank was pulling heavily from the sounds of the 50s and 60s classic rock scene, and considering that Satisfaction has a very groovy and very memorable main guitar line that could work well as a sample, it doesn't really surprise me that Fatboy Slim decided to stitch these two songs together and release this as a new single. And honestly, it's kind of surprising how much I actually really like this. Yes, it is basically just the Rockefeller Skank with the guitar line of Satisfaction, and even including the vocals from the original recording, which are admittedly a bit too quiet for my liking. Mick Jagger could have been a lot louder for the little passage that he actually gets to sing, and really it's telling of just how thrown together this feels in a way. But with that in mind, the original guitar line actually works well playing against the breakbeat production of the Rockefeller Skank, which has always been one of the best songs that Fatboy Slim has ever made. And when there are some clear vocal chops and some really cool instrumental sessions that make it actually sound really unique from the original, it honestly comes together surprisingly well and feels like a really balanced collab, all things considered. I mean, it's not great by any means, it's definitely the form of novelty that I don't expect will have much staying power, but you know what? This is not bad. I didn't mind this at all. And to end off, oh god damn it, Mediabase had next to nothing interesting happen with only one debut. Yay! I mean, at least that quiet period at the end of December that you'd expect given dance radio is not exactly something that people listen to around this time. It leads to songs like Set Me Free by Armin van Buuren and Sasha that actually hold up at number 1. And this one was really close too, considering the spins between this and our number 2 were exceptionally close. It would have just barely missed out, and I mean, thank god it's actually getting there now. But again, it was really close there, and even despite Yes Baby by Madison Beer falling to number 2, it would have held really steady had anything else come along. The fact that the difference between these two songs is only a single digit is incredible, really cool to see. But unsurprisingly, below them is Gone 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 by David Guetta, Teddy Swims and Tones and I, number 3, which doesn't look like it's actually going to go anywhere considering the spin falls were not exactly all that big. Good. I mean, thank god it's especially holding over Cry For You 2025 by SIDEPIECE at number 4. Again, we don't need this sort of garbage charting. I don't get why it continues to have momentum. And it's more concerning because beneath it we've got What If It Takes You Away by Will Sass featuring Malou at number 5. Yes, it didn't really lose spins that much, but it seems to be 1 or 2 weeks away from an utter collapse, and that's a real shame. Although I am happy it's made the year-end list at least. Same deal with Crazy by Miles Lloyd and Bunt at number 6. I mean, now would be a good time to give Spaces a bit of a revival. I mean, it's not looking great at the moment. And speaking of which, Nobody Make Me Feel by Oscar Medkay featuring Khalid is at number 7. And look, now would be the perfect time to push I Think I'm Addicted to Radio. It's got a lot of appeal there, it's intensely catchy, and again, if Make Me Feel can become a hit, this should too. Come on, it's easy money. But on the topic of things capitalizing on momentum, well, we have 2 songs in the top 10 that I expect will absolutely surge up once the new year rolls around, with Don't Blame Me by James Carter surprisingly having the better increase in spins in number 8, and Bring Me to Life by Tiesto and Fours in number 9, which surprisingly is actually stalled out already. Not looking good there, but I do expect it will gain a lot moving forward. Whereas for Forever by Elenium, Tom Grennan and Alna at number 10, yeah, not looking good for this one. Expect this to be out of the top 10 next week, and really Elenium should be pushing literally anything else at this point. There is a lot of potential on the line there. And again, the problem with nobody pushing new music in late December is the fact that in our falls and fall-offs we didn't have much of anything of note. In the latter category, the only somewhat notable story is Deep Clear Water by Griffin and Grizz, which was already underperforming to begin with. It wasn't going to stick around as is. And in our falls, well, we only had 3. Ocean by Calvin Harris and Jessie Reyes, Born to Fly by Annabelle England and Mary Droppins at 37, where both of these are easily going to make the year-end list, and unfortunately Never Knew You Albert Harvey mix by Two Lots continuing to collapse down to 50. I mean, I'm amazed that it's actually stuck around this long for a song that obscure, but unfortunately it looks like it's going to be on its way out soon. Yay. And wow, it's really revealing that in our jumps and comebacks, again, there was not much of note, as the only comeback we got was Dopamine by Robin and 49 9, not gonna complain there. And our jumps, well, both of these are genuinely great songs. I'm on board with these, with I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Arrogant at 16, and Think About Us by Sony Federa, DOD, and Poppy Bascombe at 31. That latter one's really sticking with me. I hope it sticks around. It's doing great right now. And ironically, in our debuts on Billboard's chart, it's there at 32 as well. Awesome. And along with that, we got What Love Can Do by Bonnie and Clyde at 35, and Kissing My Friends by Marshmello and Ingi already charting at 37. Interesting. I thought that latter one would have taken a little longer to get there, but hey, I'm not going to complain. And that leaves us with only one debut on Mediabase, unfortunately being number 39, Good Boys Hideaway by Daya and Albi.
Good girl who needs a little company, looking hot and low. Someone like me, now where do the good boys go to hide away, hide away?
I mean, this was going to be an uphill battle regardless, as while I don't hate the original Hideaway by Daya as much as some other people, and she would considerably improve once she left the mainstream, quite frankly, I think that she got a really rough start. She deserves a lot better. It was also proof of Daya's really amateurish songwriting, especially as a teenager, where she just straight up didn't understand how relationships work, with this sort of pretentious and really awfully written melodramatic style that I found kind of insufferable in retrospect. I get why people don't really like it. So clearly what we needed was the whole no broke boys treatment with this one by a relatively unknown artist trying to remix this song, considering it had a TikTok viral moment last year. And with this guy's profile, I had no expectations that this was going to be remotely good, and unsurprisingly it really sucks as well. I mean, again, it's soulless house slop, and quite frankly it's really badly produced at that. I don't really hear any sort of instrumental appeal here at all. I mean, right off the bat, the drops are so goddamn weak and smothered, with the percussion line sounding so quiet as the admittedly solid bass plucks just overpower the whole mix and sound really tedious to boot. And when you add on Daya's vocals being chipmunked over this really muddy mix where it's hard to ignore them, it just results in this sound of this being absolutely insufferable for me. Seriously, if I wasn't familiar with the original song, I wouldn't even be able to tell where the verses and hook start. It is just that badly produced, and somehow makes Ian Asher looks like he has talent in comparison. This just sounds atrocious. I mean, it's not the most offensive sample house song to get popular when Blackout Day Stay Away is here, but the fact that it's on a similar level of non-quality is really revealing, and I hope to God that dance radio does not fall for the bait here, because yeah, this blows. Absolutely skip it. It sucks. And yeah, that's the week. Not really ending on a good note, and it's really 50-50 overall, although the best was surprisingly a lot easier than I expected. Give Me Something by OneRepublic. Yes, I'm as shocked as anybody. I really like that track. With worst, honestly, it was a toss-up between three particular tracks here, but I think I'm going to give it to Good Boys Hideaway by Daya and Albi, because while the cover of Tattoo was misguided, I can at least understand some instrumental appeal there, and SIDEPIECE's Tech House Slop was honestly really forgettable and not exactly the sort of thing that pushed any severe annoyance buttons, whereas this absolutely did. I hope it flops on Dance Airplay. Next week, honestly, I've got nothing. There's not really any massive debuts that I can see making a run, and considering that Fred Again's USB release is probably going to end up losing some traffic, it could be interesting on charts. I hope it's new stuff. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. Merry Christmas, everyone. See you next time.